This is Leadership Beyond, your community of conversation.
But this is the first time in my professional career that everybody, 100% of us, are consciously aware we are engaged in the change initiative.
Yeah, everything. I mean, COVID caused us all to go through change, right? At the same time, but our experiences were so different.
Facing these unprecedented times in isolation is pure insanity. Joining us today is Judy Ringer. Judy is the founder of Power and Presence Training and is an international speaker, coach, and seminar leader. Judy brings to life essential conflict resolution skills such as self-management under pressure and appreciation for other viewpoints. Clients include the National Institute of Health, GE, Sony, Honda, Frito-Lay, Bose, TD Bank North, and the list is long. Judy lives in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where she is also founder of Portsmouth Aikido.
In our conversation with Judy, one takeaway for me is finding how conflict management is really about blending opposing energies into one dance to find a common ground and an acceptable outcome for both.
And one of the things that every conversation with Judy reminds me of, she talks about centering, she talks about awareness, intention, and presence, and she models it. If you watch closely, you will see how present, regardless of how busy Judy is, she is to this conversation. Welcome to Judy Ringer.
Well, welcome, Judy. Thank you so much for joining our community here. We're so grateful to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be here. I've known Tom for quite a long time, and Adrienne, nice get to know you as well. And I'm flattered that you wanted me to be on the show. So thank you.
Well, thank you. So for one, I know that Tom already knows this story, but for myself and the benefit of our listeners, I know that you are very engaged with your Aikido practice and you have brought that into conflict management. So can you tell us a little bit about how did you get into Aikido, and then how did you come to bring that to conflict management? The two seem like polar opposites to me, so.
Really, that's so interesting. And you're not the first person to say that, by the way. It's actually conflict management that brought me to Aikido.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is a long time ago now. I've had several careers in my life. This one is the longest. I've been doing this for almost 30 years now. But prior to that, I sold real estate. And if you can think of a more conflictual job, I mean, I was usually as an agent in the middle of two parties who were in conflict in a sense. Or negotiating or trying to come to a price. And sometimes I was in conflict with the building inspector or the banker, or, there was just a lot of stuff going on. So I became interested in conflict, and a friend of mine in the business told me about a workshop out in Colorado, and I went to it, and I met my mentor, who's still a good friend and teacher for me, sensei for me. His name is Thomas Crum.
I met him.
You did?
I met him at a conference. Yes, many, many, many years ago. Never got to go to one of his retreats though.
Oh, well, if you're a skier, he's still doing the magic of skiing once a year. So, and I just came back from that a little while ago. But anyway, I met Tom, and he did this workshop. I think at the time, I forget what it was called then. He's done so many different things, like The Magic of Conflict. That was his first book, and Journey to Center, another book of his. And he often titled his workshops the same way. And that's the first time I ran into Aikido. So conflict brought me to that course. And then I said, wow, what's this martial art called Aikido that's so beautiful and so interesting and is based on non-harming? The goal is to render the attack harmless without harming the opponent. So how do you, like you said, how do you do that? And And that's what everybody says. So I got involved with Aikido that way. And now this is back in 84. And I started going often to Tom's workshops after that. And I still sold real estate until like 1993. And but when I got out of it, I was by that time certified to teach Tom's work. And I experimented with friends and people who would come to public workshops that I would offer with little 8.5 by 11 sheets at the health food store. You know, that's how I advertised in those days. And that's how I got started. I had a lot of nice support in the beginning, people who gave me space, for example, and yeah, lots of things. So, but just to show you, you know, your watchers might be interested in this too. So the idea and why Aikido is so different in a sense from other martial arts, though many arts teach the same discipline in terms of centering and managing yourself first. But Aikido is all about, here comes an attack. Let's say somebody's coming in to punch me or something, right? Instead of blocking that, right, and punching back and trying to keep the attack away, Aikido says this is energy to be utilized. You know, we don't have to hide from it. We don't have to block it. In fact, if we use it, you know, and so the using is me entering, here comes the attack, I get out of the way, here's the attacker's arm or weapon, and I can redirect that weapon in a way that keeps me safe, but doesn't harm my attacker. And so that was very appealing and also applicable in so many conflict settings.
Well, you make a distinction that I'd like to go deeper into now. And you've already hinted at it, which is it's about peace. And we think of martial arts as fighting, but it's about peace. But you use a term instead of conflict management, which just might mean nobody got fired, it didn't escalate, and we didn't treat each other badly, to conflict transformation. So say a little bit more about the mindset difference between those two.
Well, I think you really explained what we think of when we talk about management. I need to manage the situation, and that could have a lot of different outcomes. It could have the outcome of sort of tamping something down, not talking about it. Let's not go there. Managing could also be let's talk about it, right? So and figure out how we can solve it together. Now, transformation, just for me, is what Aikido does. It transforms the attack into a gift of energy that everybody can use. And the whole idea behind Aikido is that it's not just about harmony, right? It's about these opposing forces that come together and build so that we can then transform into something that is, well, let me read a great quote by the founder of Aikido. Actually, not the founder of Aikido, one of my original senseis in this work when I started. So that's a whole other story. So I get excited about Aikido, right? And I come back to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I start to teach my friends, who are the only people that I can think of right away. So I get my friends together, and pretty soon their friends start calling me up and saying, when are you going to do this again, right? So I'm teaching this, but without any real foundation in the martial art myself. And so I found a dojo up in Portland, Maine, and then eventually started my own dojo and began to practice Aikido. So I'm kind of an entrepreneur by heart anyway. So I had Portsmouth Aikido, which is still running. It started in 1995. Now, here's what my original sensei said about Aikido. Harmony doesn't mean getting along with people at any cost just to avoid a confrontation. Harmony is used in Aikido, does not involve compromising at all. Rather, Aikido's harmony brings different, even opposing elements together and intensifies them in a way that drives everything toward a higher level. Right? So this is what transformation is about. So we're upset with each other, all three of us, let's say. And one of us has the skill, and it could be anybody, right? I mean, some people just want to keep fighting, but it only takes one person, right? To say, hey, let's sit down. Adrian, let me hear what's on your mind. What do you need to come out of this? And good questions, like you did with Sherry and, right? Sherry Torres and
Jackie.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And, so you ask appreciative questions that get
Yeah.
people wanting to talk. And then I do the same thing with Tom, or Tom does it with me, whoever has the skill to do that. And then we begin to get things on the table that so we begin to see where we might have some commonality. And a skilled facilitator can help that to happen.
Mhm.
And so then what was a fight or what was people being angry or triggered transforms into something else. And it does become a gift where everybody learns and everybody ideally walks away with something they can do. Now, we may not all have the same solution, but maybe we each walk away with a piece of the solution that we can implement. Does that make sense?
It does.
A lot of
It,
sense.
it sounds like there's a bit of letting go of maybe ego that is required as part of that. Would you agree?
Yes, yes, I think so. I think that's one way of putting it. We have to let go, at least for a while,
Yeah.
of the need to be right and the need to get our point across. That will come, right, in my thinking and the way that I teach. I usually think that in a conflict, it's really helpful to hear what other people are saying so that I have something to blend with, right? Otherwise, I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know where their energy is. So, uh, and that kind of comes naturally to me anyway. I've always been a good listener. I mean, the thing that appealed to me about Aikido in the first place was the blending, the moving in, but let's see where they're coming from and see things from their direction, because I'm an accommodator at heart. I mean, that's my style. I like to please people. So it took me a little while to really appreciate the power of Aikido, because once you understand where they're going, then you can redirect that energy into a possible solution, because I do have a point of view too.
Mhm.
If I'm truly listening and really trying to understand where they're coming from, maybe I'll change my mind. I mean, I have to be willing to change my mind or change myself. And if in fact there's a piece that I can agree with, and then ideally show them maybe a piece they're not seeing from my point of view or my constituents' point of view or my team's point of view, right? Say I'm a manager or something, and I'm standing up for my team with another manager, then it's really important for me to express that as well. And I think it's easier to be the expressive person and assert your point of view after the other person's asserted theirs, because they're relaxed now and they hear that you have heard them.
Talk a little bit about prepare. You talked about your tendency, and then what we heard is because you've been practicing it, it's now your tendency to listen first, seek to understand. But talk about somebody that's new to this, that is aware that they have been trained inadvertently that conversation is a blood sport and they're trying to be right and they're very expressive, and that can be a strength energy when in the right place. Talk a little bit about, before you come to the mat, as you put it, about preparing yourself not to just react. How can you begin to get a new habit?
Yeah, that's what it is, Tom. I mean, really, it's practicing a new habit. Because we are practiced at certain things already. I'm practiced at accommodating. So I have to, if I want to get my point across,
And I'm practiced at expressing. I did it like that on purpose. So let's work together and cooperate. So tell me what I can do to.
So, well, it starts for me with centering, with quieting that voice in me that wants to make everybody happy all the time. I mean, I appreciate that. I'm glad I'm a nice person. I hope I'm a nice person. And sometimes it takes a little bit of practice for me to assert myself. I have to think ahead of time. So to your point, Tom, if I'm somebody who's always going for what I want and he finds it really easy to assert myself, that's, let's say on the disc or something, I'm a high D, then first of all comes awareness, right? Do I know that about myself? Do I even want to change? And if I do, okay, let's say I've gotten some coaching or I just have some self-awareness and I realize this isn't helping my workplace at all, or my family for that matter, and I want to change. So I know that listening is a good thing and it probably would help me. What I would do, or what I would suggest to that person is every time, well, first of all, let's say it's with my family in this case, I might share with people that I am trying to change, right? That my kids and my partner, spouse, I would say, I'm trying to be a better listener. I realize that many of our arguments happen in ways that have me always needing to be right. And it would really help me if you could call me on that. Right? Now, the first time the spouse calls, it may not be easy. And he or she will have to just remind them, they'll have to say, honey, you told me, to call you, I'm going to do this. So they enter into a process together or with the team. He could say the same thing. She could say the same thing to the team. I'm trying to work this out so that I hear you more and am less dogmatic about what we need to do on our team. So I'll seek out your help once in a while. And I'm going to use certain questions now. So in a team meeting, for example, it's going to take other people some change too, right? Because they're used to this manager being the boss and an authoritarian boss. And when that manager says, so what thoughts do other people have at the meeting? Nobody's going to speak up at first. And they're going to have to say, I know that you're tentative now because of the way I've been in the past, but if you could just speak up a little bit now, it would really help me. And I promise not to shut you down or something like that. And I think little by little we change, and little by little the people on our team or in our family help us change, especially if we invite them to. Otherwise, they may think that you're weird for a while, that or that you're just going to do this for a couple of days and you're going to revert back.
Enlisting others, I think, is a real key point. Those that you're with, you can't do this without others. Really, this is true, I think, for any practice, anything that we're trying to change. It begins with that awareness, but then it's enlisting those you are with the most so that they're aware and give me a sign, right? Whatever, put your hand up or something, or a timeout or this, something, right, so that you can end the power of the pause. We've talked about this a lot, right? So when you see the signal, to use your words, Judy, recenter, right? Because you're going to go back to those habits, but it's coming back and centering and reminding yourself of, wait, I'm practicing a new thing. And so how do I bring that back? It's like inviting someone to a dance. Like, come with me.
That's right, Adrienne. That's right. And so on my website, there's an article that people can download, and also in the book, Enemies to Allies. There's a 6-step checklist. And the first 2 steps are about having a difficult conversation. The first step is center myself, right? But the second step is equally important, which is purpose. What is my purpose for this conversation, especially if I'm initiating it? What do I really want to accomplish here? What's my positive intention? What's theirs? And to sort of visualize, to your point, Adrienne, how am I going to maintain, or how am I going to recenter? Because I won't maintain center for very long. Life happens. Somebody will say something, I'll get triggered. Okay, so will I just look at my watch once in a while to center? Will I just, people have different ways, physical ways, mental ways. And the importance of centering, I get excited and uncentered myself, because when I talk about this stuff, I get a little bit up here, right? So just like, okay, yeah, the importance of centering can be, we can't talk about it enough, because unless we have that ability to calm ourselves down, take a breath, reestablish what's my purpose here, we will get lost, especially if the stakes are high and we get triggers.
So Aikido naturally connects intention with movement. And in our culture, we get disembodied. And so what you're really talking about, not to the degree you can do it on the mat, but to have ways to remind yourself that you are not your body and you are in a body, and you sure aren't this big prefrontal cortex that thinks it needs to figure it all out. So it's awareness, it's intention, and it's engaging in the moment. And then also in Aikido, sometimes you fall. And
That's
it's falling the right way and getting up again. That's a good metaphor for, I can't believe I interrupted her again. I respect her and I just got excited and I'm expressive and I wasn't trying even to be right when I forgot.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And remind myself, I respect her and that wasn't respectful, begin again. I love that.
Yes. Yes. And catching ourselves and being transparent that way, Tom, even saying it out loud, I realized I just forgot myself and I started doing it again. And I'm going to stop, and I'm going to listen. Let me ask you a question. What, right? And we can help each other, like in families. I mean, I've trained my husband to ask me questions instead of give me advice. I mean, sometimes I'll say, I really want your advice now, but otherwise I'll say, can you ask me some questions about this? Because I don't know where I stand on it. And he's gotten really good at it, all kinds of questions at first, I don't know what to ask. I'll just, anything, but
If you can train your spouse, you can train anyone.
Yeah, asking questions. I often say to people in my workshops, when in doubt, ask a question that you don't know the answer to. Yeah,
And asking for what you need too, right? Like you're not expecting your husband to know. So you've cued him.
that's a big one, Adrienne. I mean,
Yeah.
in general, a really good prescription for conflict. And I used to operate this way. So, and I still do sometimes because I'm afraid to ask for what I want, right? As an accommodator. So here's the prescription. You have a need, all right? I have a need. But I don't want to say what that need is. And so I expect you to know what it is. I just expect you to know. And because I don't get my need met, I have, in a way, I have a prejudice against the need because I'm afraid to tell you about it, right? So that keeps me from speaking. And then I get mad at you for not giving it to me. And the person doesn't even know, why you're upset. And, well, you should know. I'm sorry, I don't know.
Or you lash out about something completely unrelated.
Exactly. Exactly.
Or the escalation happens internally. And then
Mm.
all of a sudden you can't hold it in anymore. And your counterpart said, boy, that's pretty extreme for this. And they list 15 things they'd never mentioned. It isn't just this, it's those 15. And I confess to being guilty of that. Yeah, it builds up, but it only builds up in us. And that's the key, having the energy, but it's not directed by an intention.
Yes. Yes, which Tom speaks to another point around conflict, which is we often, when we're in a conflict with someone, we often blame them or think of them as the initiator of the conflict in some way. And it's helpful, I think, to consider before we enter the conversation, if we are bold enough to do it, to think about what's our contribution to this conflict. And you just explained one. My contribution is I've never told you that I have this need. I've never expressed myself before. So I don't really have any right to be any more angry this time than I would have a year ago, the first time it happened, right? Because I never expressed it and you don't possibly.
And that was one of the suggestions in preparing, is start with yourself. What is my contribution?
Yes.
And we often skip that because we want to get to the outcome. And we know it's about them giving us what we need. And we get into a lot of trouble there. Start with yourself. How did I contribute to it?
Yeah, exactly.
Love that.
Yep. Yep.
Can we talk a little bit about presence? Just being present, like in the moment, and how to stay in the moment. I think this is something that I'll admit I struggle with, because I've got, the next hour, the next days, the next weeks of things on my mind. How do I stay right here and be here and then move to there and there and there and there? How do we do that better?
Yeah. Great question. Well, Again, awareness. I think so. If you meditate, I won't ask you if you do or not, but I think meditation is a great way to practice presence, practice being in our bodies and our minds at the same time. You know, that conjunction of mind, body, spirit that is so helpful when they're all aligned in the same direction. And I think that taking that time, even if you have a family, which I think you do, Adrienne, and probably young kids,
Mhm.
you know, that's so hard to find that time. And
Mhm.
I'm speaking to everybody in the world right now, including myself, because I sometimes find it difficult too. And I notice the difference if I can meditate even for a few minutes every day. It helps me to notice when I become not present and not in my body, you know, not in my body, not with myself. I think that with practice, you become more attuned to it and you like being present. You know, the body likes it, we like it, the mind likes it. And when we start to lose ourselves, we come back sooner. I can do that easily. And like if I'm preparing a meal or something, I'll get so into the this and that and this, then I'll just forget where I am, you know, and then I'll just stop, take a breath, notice my kitchen. Wow, it's a nice day out there. There's windows. I can take a, you know, look outside. When I'm at the computer, there's also a window on in the room where I work, and I'll just sometimes take a moment and look outside the window and just become more present. If you're with your kids, right, or your spouse, your friends, like I'll be walking along in the street with my friend and I'm listening to her, but I'm sort of somewhere else too. Like, what am I going to say next? Or, you know, what do I have to do next when I get back home? And I just stop. But you see, I have to notice that, right?
Yeah.
And then I just stop and I watch her and I look at her and I think, what a nice friend. Oh, you know, I just notice things about people and when I can do it. And I don't always either, you know, sometimes I admit to, you know, listening to a habit I've created recently that I'm not particularly sure I want to continue, for example, is when I'm walking, I'll listen to a book on recording, or a book on tape, whatever, digital book. And I love the book and I love listening and I love walking at the same time, but I'm not really present in my surroundings. I'm not noticing the beauty of the day. Or
Are you open to a suggestion there? Because that's one that I make progress on. And that is, it comes back to something that you taught us, is intention, which is now I will, because I do intend to keep up with audio listening.
Mhm.
And sometimes I walk every day, but sometimes I say today is a listening and I will walk by the lake. But then the next day I'll say, I don't need headphones. I'm really going to take a walk by the lake. And it's just deciding that sometimes the purpose is more the audio book than the walking, or sometimes, and it's just about bringing the intention to that next, because I was always listening to audio when I walked. And I thought, I'm not really seeing. I live by Lake Michigan, but I'm not ready to go all the way the other way either.
Yes, that's a
And,
great.
and that's true for working out too. Sometimes you are checking the box, but
Yep,
we want to be present and we don't want to just get on the treadmill and check the box. We exercise.
I
So I
love.
think that's, play around with it. It's worked for me.
What's my intention today? You know, do I want to listen?
Yeah,
Or do I want to really take in the.
yeah. Because if my intention is to listen to 5 podcasts in a week, I probably am going to have to do some of that on the go.
Yes, yes, and that takes away the self-judgment too. You know, today's
Yeah,
a listening day. Yeah,
today's a listening day.
yeah, I like
Well,
that.
thank you so much for investing this space. And I'll make a comment on presence. I've said it before, and it's not flattery. Anybody watching can see. As busy as you are, every conversation with you, you feel present. So I know you're practicing what you teach. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, Judy.
Thank you, Adrian. This has been a total pleasure. I'll do it anytime.
Oh, great. We might take you up on part 2. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Beyond podcast. We hope you benefited from this conversation as much as we have. We invite you to join our community of conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to sign up at aleadershipbeyond.com for free materials and updates. That's aleadershipbeyond.com. Join us in 2 weeks for our next episode.